You're about to learn these secrets from an expert negotiator on how to get what you want in any situation. I'm Cicely, and in today's career conversation, I'm introducing you to one of the world's leading experts on how to negotiate. His name is Barry Nalebuff. Barry is the author of Split the Pie, a radical new way to negotiate, and his insights are absolutely phenomenal. Barry is one of the co-founders of Honest Tea. And in this conversation, we talk about how he negotiated selling Honest Tea to Coca-Cola. And while that seems like a monumental negotiation, how it actually turns out that he uses the principles for that negotiation as he does anything else. So, whether you are negotiating a salary or a raise, whether you're talking about buying a new car, or whether you're negotiating the job that you want, stay tuned because you're going to learn the secrets that Barry has to offer that will help you get what you want in any situation. Now, if you're joining me on YouTube this morning, I can see some of you are. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to subscribe so that you're notified every time I post a new video. But look, feel free to join me here on Monday and Thursday mornings at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. For those of you on LinkedIn, and I know a couple of you who are my usual LinkedIn folks told me you couldn't be here this morning, but you look forward to the replay. I am grateful that you're going to watch. You're going to love this video today. So whether you're here live or whether you're on the replay, pull up your chair because you're getting ready to get a masterclass and how to negotiate like a pro. So this is Barry. I want to introduce you to Barry. Like I said, he is the founder of Honest Tea. Talks about that negotiation in the book and in the podcast that we're introducing this morning. But Barry is also a professor at Yale, and so he truly studies and knows the ins and outs of how to achieve what you want in any negotiation. Now, I don't usually introduce you to my podcast on these videos. However, today is such an important conversation. And look, I posted part one last week. That's why you see this posting on Facebook. But what I wanted to show you this morning really was, quite frankly, look at these comments that we got last week. Best interview ever. When the podcast ended, I was thinking I wanted more. And Randy, the reason why I'm doing today's career conversation on negotiations because part two of my conversation with Barry Nalebuff is now live and available. So Randy, I hope you love it as much as you did the first part of the episode. Kristen Stover says, incredible interview. I learned so much. And now Barry's book is on my list. So we dropped part one last week. Part two is available. And if you stay tuned in just a moment, I'll show you exactly where to find this masterclass in negotiation. Because we cover such topics in the conversation as how to negotiate. Who are you negotiating with? And you may think that's an obvious answer, but truly, after you listen to this conversation with Barry, you realize it's not. What are you negotiating about? And this is where Barry gets into this idea of the pie. Are you negotiating around the whole pie, part of the pie, half of the pie? What are you actually negotiating about? And the pie analogy is such a spot on analogy, and he tells us why he uses that analogy and why that became a title of the book. But what surprised me in this conversation is he talks about and explains, quite frankly, how negotiating can be a win-win for both sides. Now, if you're like me, you tend to think negotiation is about one side or the other. You win, I lose. I win, you lose. But Barry says nothing can be further from the truth. It's possible for both sides to get what you want in a negotiation. So I'm going to show you where to find this awesome conversation. I can see Randy's already telling me that she's already listened to part two. She's 5 steps ahead of me as usual. Listen, if you've got your iPhone, you can see mine on the screen. Yes, you can see my positive affirmation that I use every day because I just love positive affirmations. But if you're on your iPhone, and this podcast and this episode is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you can go to my website. It's available on any and all podcast platforms. But If you click on your Apple podcast, now you can see I've already subscribed, thankfully, because it's my podcast. But let's say you hadn't subscribed yet. If you go to your home screen and your podcast, you can type in, pull up your chair. You will see it pops up right at the top. Click on that and it pops up immediately. Pull up your chair. There you go. The episode is live and ready to go. And you can see there's part 1 and part 2 of my conversation with Barry. But again, this is my iPhone. If you have Android, if you prefer Spotify, if you want to go to my website and listen, it's all available there for you on all podcast platforms. And like I said, I don't usually bring the podcast forward on these calls, but this one is so important because think about it. If you've watched these videos, then you know we've talked about, and I've been fortunate enough to introduce you to some amazing people through the Pull Up Your Chair podcast. We've had a masterclass on how to influence others. We've had someone on the podcast who talked about how to navigate constant change and be successful. And now today is a masterclass in how to negotiate with Barry. And listen, if you're not a podcast person, that is totally cool. This is the book, Split the Pie, a new radical way to negotiate. Hopefully that's coming through on the screen. And at the end of the book, he gives you 45 key takeaways. And you probably can't see that on the screen, but he basically summarizes everything he tells you in 45 key takeaways. This is the conversation you want to listen to because no matter where you are in your life, you negotiate more than you think. You're in a constant negotiation every single day. This podcast, this conversation, following Barry's advice, will absolutely make sure you are negotiating like the expert that he is and the expert in pro negotiation that you want to be. So it's my pleasure this morning. I'm so excited for you to listen to part 1 and part 2 of this conversation and learn how to negotiate like a pro. I've already read the book. I'm going to go back and read it again. And yes, I encourage you to subscribe to the Pull Up Your Chair podcast. What I love about this is it's free. You get all of this information for free. Please take advantage of it. You'll be glad you did. Don't miss this. Don't miss this episode. But I'm going to jump over to some comments because, like I said, Randy's already beat me to the punch this morning. Randy, I love that you've already listened to part 2 before we even got started this morning. And yes, the think like the other side. I was quite intrigued by that notion as well, simply because we tend to go into negotiations thinking only of what we want and only of our side, not what the other side's point of view is. So I love that Kristen said it's on her summer reading list. It's clearly on my list. I've read it once, going to read it again. So I am grateful. Listen, negotiation is a skill. We all think we're good at it. Most of us aren't. Most of us aren't. We get nervous when we have to negotiate. You know, we don't know what to say. We have to rehearse. And even then, we still walk away feeling like we didn't perform our best. Barry's going to show you how to overcome that. Chris, good morning. Barry's going to explain to you how to overcome that. Now you have a plan and you know exactly what you want and how to get what you want out of any negotiation. So again, check out the Pull Up Your Chair podcast episode where Barry has part 1 and part 2 of his conversation. It's so great we had to do two parts. But also check out his book, Split the Pie, A Radical New Way to Negotiate. This is a masterclass you don't want to miss. I hope that you truly find value in this. And listen, I would love to know below in the comments. Do you think you're good at negotiation? Are you a good negotiator? I'd like to think I am, but I know I've learned a lot from Barry's conversation. So if you're watching this on the replay, drop me some comments below after you watch. I'd love to know what you think of not only the podcast conversation, but also the art and science of negotiation as well. I'd love to know what you think. If you haven't subscribed yet, now would be an awesome time to do so that you don't miss any of these career conversations. And look, while we're talking about negotiation today, I'm going to link to additional training for you that I encourage you to check out, and I'll include some free resources in the comments below. So, as always, I'm grateful that you joined me this morning. I look forward to seeing you in the next training very soon.